Hey everyone, Chris Sawyer here. The Varietal Show is back. I am here right now with my good friends Dennis Patton and his wonderful wife Andrea, and we are sitting here at the DNA Vineyard. I mean, believe it or not, there is DNA in wine, you guys.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk a lot about that in a few minutes. This is the DNA Vineyard brand, Pinot Noir from Russian River Valley. That's where we're sitting right here. We're getting a little breeze in the late afternoon. It's so good, and it's so Russian River Valley. Interesting story here is how Dennis and I met is a long time ago in Mendocino County, which is just up north from us, and it is that direction from here because that is the ocean where the sun is going down over there. Dennis and I became good friends for a variety of reasons, but one of them is this great Coro label that is a Mendocino signature that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. But you guys live here now, which is a great story in itself. But DNA, if you get it, Dennis and Andrea, DNA, it's not just about science, you guys. It's about passion for wine. And these two are awesome at it. So, Dennis, you and Andrea met. Andrea, you gave me the whole lowdown on this. Passionate person, worked in business and MBA and all this stuff in business. Wanted to go into the real life, which is called wine and food. You run in the streets of LA selling wine to everyone. Came up this way, met this man. We're all happy together today, you know. It's a fun thing. You guys got together, and here we are today, tasting their great wines.
Yeah.
So here to us, and here to you two. One other thing, too, that Dennis, you might know Dennis or you might not know Dennis. He's kind of an unsung hero in this area because everyone, Robert Mondavi and Mary Edwards and all these people. Well, Mendocino, big deal. But also some other reasons you might know him. There's a brand called Trader Joe's. Anyone ever hear about that? Well, this man actually makes a lot of those wines, and it's a whole thing that we could go into and talk for basically 2 to 3 hours on about that whole thing. But a lot of those wines are like this one right here. You might be seeing this at some point.
Yeah, it's all over the country.
It's
right now
in the
Trader
stores.
Joe's,
Yeah.
yeah.
All over the stores. Let me just show it to you a little bit bigger here. This is real
unusual
stuff, you guys. Unusually delicious, that is. And just that's how great of a signature this man has. And it's one of those wonderful things that they got a hold of me, and I said, yes, I want to talk to Dennis, and yes, I want to do this show with you because it's just fun. And being here, I gotta just tell you where we're at. So we are right in the kind of the Trenton Healdsburg kind of area here, where we've got Joseph Swan right next to us, Rod and Lynn, great friends of ours.
Original Pinot.
One of the original Pinot of Russian River is right across the street.
And
We have Kistler's
Vine
Vine Hill Ranch right there, which is like pretty much the highest end of Kistler. If you know super high-end California Pinot Noirs, you know the Vine Hill. And then we're sitting right here in the middle of it. So it's a great afternoon to just be celebrating this. So we're tasting the new vintage right now of this DNA Pinot Noir from right here. This is a 2019, which is a killer vintage. Tell us a little bit about this, you guys, and what that vintage was like for you.
Well, that was an easy vintage, to tell you the honest truth, because there was no weather issues to speak of. There was a little bit of rain during bloom, but it was so inconsequential.
No smoke.
No smoke.
No smoke. Smoke free. Smoke free, you guys.
Smoke free. Yeah, boy, big time. And it was, we had no giant heat waves at harvest. The other thing is, I have a ton of Mendocino experience and hadn't had as much down here, but we've owned this place. This will be 10 years now.
Yeah.
And we still have our presence in Mendo, by the way.
Yeah.
That it just didn't have any heat wave blast, nothing horrible. It was, one of those harvests that after it was over, you go, God, that was pretty easy.
Yeah.
It really worked out pretty well.
Well,
And over the years, we've harvested a lot of fruit besides our own for other projects, etc.
now, I get really nerdy about clones, and I love to talk about clones. You've got some good ones that you bought this piece of property, and it had some good ones in here. It's got Pomard, and I really get that in the nose. And I talk about this all the time to people, how I can spot Pomard. It really does have a very distinctive, if you go back to your childhood and you remember root beer barrel candies, and you pop them, and you're like, it has that flavor. It always does, no matter who makes it. It's got that little trace. That's a Pomard clone to me. What else is in here?
UCD 32, which is an unusual one. Very little in the state planted, and a long story attached to it, of which Chris knows quite a bit about.
I do.
Yeah. This was Roederer from France's red wine clone. And Michel Saad was involved. We know Michel well from his sparkling wine career in Anderson Valley.
Yep.
Was involved in the collection and bringing it over. And these folks here, the original owners of this property, when they planted vineyard, this place was originally a vineyard in the 1870s, 1880s. Our neighbors across the street have photos looking up here at a barn with, remember the gal that's pitching up 2 horses to go plow?
That's Lynn Berglin's aunt.
Yeah.
And so pre-prohibition, you can see the grapevines on this property.
Yeah.
Then, of course, it went to cherries and apples.
85
you can still
acres
see
of
some of
dry
the old
farm.
Gravensteins. But then this place was planted by the prior owners in the late 90s with these great clones, so we were fortunate.
They were connected with, at the time, they were selling their wine for their grapes for sparkling to Gloria Ferrar, who was involved in bringing over those clones.
Bob Iatosca and Bob Crumley, hello to you too, who really were the core guys that were there for like 3 decades at Gloria Ferrar. They made a little deal with Michel from Roederer to go over to Champagne and kind of talk to people about getting these clones and bringing them back and doing a test for UC Davis, which is my alma mater. I love those Aggies. Go Aggies. But the fact was, Bob and the team, they had a really great method of doing it. They drank them under the table in Champagne region on beer. Americans can handle a lot of beer. They could not. They gave into everything and gave us all the clones that we needed, and we checked all this stuff out. It's a great story, and I did write a cover story on this at one point. I couldn't really tell that to everyone that read that story, but it's a good one. But Bob is still around. He lives in Bennett Valley with his great wife, Julia, and this is a great clone that kind of came in through UC Davis because of that whole process. And
the third clone is the Dijon 115.
115, which
and
came
it's
in
planted
through.
on. It's planted where
That's
you have
one
to
Rob
hand tend it.
Rod tries to grab some.
It's planted 4x5 on hillside, which means handwork.
Handwork, a lot of handwork. So that means it's anything like 113, 114, 115, 667, 777. You get into 3 digits. Oregon State University brought in these Dijon clones. Right. It's just basically what it is. The real, there's the faux 828, which is a whole different story than the 828, but let's not go there. Mary Edwards hated the 828, just by the way, my great friend Mary. But it just is one of those things where you get into these kinds of clones, and I really get it, all of these things together inside that. And from an estate right here in Sonoma County, it's really special. You guys do such a good job on this. From being from Mendocino guy, who I knew you first, when you come down here and look at him.
Well, this was a jewel, and it needed a little work.
Yeah, it's true, but I worked with lots of sites and lots of fruit.
Yeah.
And I had clients in Napa County too. I mean, I dealt with like 140 tons of Stagecoach Cabernet at $6,000 a ton 15 years ago. Whoa, Jesus.
Unbelievable.
But what we love about this is a chance to bring Russian River Valley, since we create wine brands for a lot of retailers, to have a Russian River Valley that was more accessible price point, but they could still really demonstrate the terroir, which of course is proven now with the neighborhood project here in Russian River Valley, but at a price point that would lead people who are learning about Pinot and that were then interested in learning about the Russian River Valley, the heart of some of the best Pinot in this country and in the world. But before maybe jumping off a cliff and buying a bottle of Kistler for a lot of money, or Joseph Swan, which certainly deserve it, they could get something from us, maybe a private label for a retailer or DNA at a much more accessible price point, and then from there launch into buying some of the best Pinots in the world from our neighbors. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I love it. We were tasting the Mud Pie Chardonnay a little bit earlier. Tell us a little bit about the Mud Pie label. Oh, yes. So that was a label. We don't have one out here, but I'll grab one really quick. Tell them about it. The Mud Pie label is basically it's about being a kid again.
And it's a project we've done for an organization. It's called the Wine and Spirits Guild of America, and they are a confederation of 40-something independent retailers in the country that in the modern era, to compete against box stores, they've conglomerated themselves as a buying group. So we do some wines specifically for that organization.
Yeah.
And this is one of them, and it's all independent retailers all over the country.
Yeah, and I'm gonna
family owned.
We're gonna taste this mud pie Zinfandel and some Petite Syrah in a little while too later. But the fact is, one of the key things about you and I becoming friends, Dennis, was an organization that you kind of helped start, the Coro organization. And I will say this to my own credit, thank you, and Jason Jenkins, who when we started Vine and Barrel, the amazing wine shop in Petaluma, we had a great time by hosting the first ever Coro tasting by the producers that make the Coro brand, that have this branding on top of it. It always says Coro on top of the label, Coro Mendocino. And we were the first ones to ever do that outside of Mendocino, where you guys came down as a group when we were there in our shop.
A consortium.
It was a consortium. So let's talk about this. This is based on the fact that California, especially Northern California, we can do something that's very unique up here. And it's called Mediterranean style wines. These grapes that were grown in the Mediterranean came here. They were successful, and we knew it in Mendocino County especially. Tell us a little bit about that origin of the Coro branding.
Well, some of myself and 4 or 5 other of the original founders in Coro had already had a lot of experience making wines in Mendocino County, and felt that we needed to have a signature product to help on the all-important PR acknowledgement front, which we were lacking. Because historically the number 1 client for Mendocino fruit has been Sonoma County. Yeah. The number 2 is Napa County, and so they bury us at 24%.
They buy a bunch from up there.
They buy thousands and thousands of tons and don't tell you about it.
Like my dump bucket?
Yeah.
There you go. So we decided, we got together and said we want to have the possibility of as many of the Mendocino producers as possible be able to play in this category. And it has to coalesce with the fact that, okay, what can we do well? And we decided that we had a lot of historical Zinfandel vineyards in a lot of the sub-appellations in Mendocino County. And so over time, it took about a year, we built this protocol, page I'll call it, and that Zinfandel has to be the lead varietal. Yep. But it can't be more than 70%.
Yep.
And it has to be 40%. Those numbers are a reason. 70% means you can't varietally label it as Zinfandel. We wanted to be a unique product. And we wanted to be able to enlist all these other areas. And that's kind of worked. Is the pandemic really threw us for a whack, because the people who've been most successful in the program had really active tasting room business and could talk to people directly about an unusual product, because you can use up to 10 other varieties.
What makes it, sorry to interrupt, but what makes Coro so unique is there's nothing like this in the world. I mean, it's AOC, DOCG on steroids. Because not only is there a unison packaging, but there's a protocol at the consortium that the wine must be brown bag tasted throughout its winemaking the first year.
By the other producers.
Other producer. So you are tasting with your competitors, and it is not unusual for someone to actually vote their own wine down.
I know.
But imagine a competitor in a region like any AOC appellation in France telling their neighbors, no, that doesn't cut the mustard for that label. Like, that just doesn't happen anywhere
and
in the world.
especially because of the differences of the varieties that can be in there. So this was based on the success of Mendocino County overall, and how many different types of weather conditions you have there. You can grow a lot of different grapes.
Depending on your little
very,
size.
very, very similar to Sonoma County and Mendocino County. We really are closer to the ocean, which is a very big benefit to us being coastal counties and going up this way. I got to really discuss this in some of my classes on my recent cruise on Celebrity Cruises, my favorite boat, ship, sorry. Believe me, and some great people like Rebecca and Margaret, and these great people I met from Canada who are dear friends of mine now, and all the other people that kind of came to the classes. Dr. Dave, who's like a super great guy, who's one of my past shows, like actually a couple weeks ago it aired. Dr. Dave from San Diego has delivered 5,000 children.
Wow.
And he's an expert on glaciers and also on coral reef. The man is amazing. But
Coral reef?
Coral Reef. Coral Reef, right here. I'm an expert on that, Dave, Dr. Dave. But the fact is that I really talked about proprietary blends and what proprietary blends mean and why it's different than a Bordeaux blend or what we call a Meritage blend if you belong to that association. Actually, that's a very interesting comparison. Is the Meritage Association is you can only do so many things in there. This is the same thing. You can only do. This is not about Cabernet. It's not a Cabernet-based wine.
No.
It's actually the other thing. But you make a signature blend that is very similar to what you do each year. You make differences because of how the grapes are growing, and so each one is more about the vintage than it is about the style.
It's about the vintage.
And so
you can change your
So this one is 44%. This is the 2016, and we're going to taste the 2018, so you can kind of jump to 2 right here. So this is 44% Zinfandel, 24% Syrah, 18% Grenache, which I love so much, and also 14% Petit Syrah. We'll talk a lot more about that in a minute because Petit Syrah is one of his super lovey-loveys, and with good reason. But this is a great one. Let's just look at the 17. We won't taste this, but the 17 is 3% more Zinfandel. It's got 42% Syrah, which is a huge difference from 24%. No Grenache in this one. And it's got Petit Syrah in here too, but it's got just this little dash. I swear to God, it's just a dash of Primitivo, which is the DNA connected via DNA. Once again, DNA, where's that label? DNA connected via DNA to Zinfandel, but it's different because I noticed it right away and I said, you guys, it's got that blue fruit characteristic. And it did. And it's like that Primitivo is there. So you have these abilities, but you got to think Mediterranean. And how do we eat these days? We don't eat steak and potatoes all the time. This is the most important thing about food culture and why this wine and this style of wine from Mendocino. It goes with everything.
Yeah.
It goes with all sorts of dishes at the table. If you go to a restaurant, I mean, everyone's having something different. So how do you match it? And especially if you want something with some texture and some body, and you're so good at texture. He's a texture god, of just creating wines that have texture. Why do you think he's in Trader Joe's?
He's had 20-something lots blended into a wine.
I mean, this man knows his texture.
Yeah, it's the most complex. I've done that.
And the core varietals of this are from our little 4-acre property, or 42-acre property. 4-acre is all we could get out of the vineyard that we planted back in 2004. We started working on it to be a Coro one day when it grew up.
Yeah.
It was a few years after the Coro consortium launched, and we loved that program so much that we planted our first little baby vineyard with Petit Syrah, Zin, Syrah, and Grenache Noir, certain clones that Dennis had selected just to hopefully one day get to be a Coro when it grew up.
Yeah, love it. Let's taste this 18 real quick. So as we move down, so now we're talking 55% Zinfandel here. And I think if you guys watch this show enough, you guys know that I'm super duper passionate about Zinfandel. Zinfandel I can talk about forever, and there's so many great gods of Zinfandel out there. God rest his soul, Kent Rosenblum, and the great Joel Peterson, and Paul Draper from Ridge, and all the people that taught me so much about Zinfandel and why it is the great statement grape of America and California's state grape, believe it or not. It is.
Makes sense.
John's been working with growers 5-6 generations, knows every block in Mendocino County where to get the best Zin.
So this is really this is a base of 3 here. So we're talking about a great vintage, 2018, very, very good vintage for us. Right there with 2016, very showy vintages. And actually, I might argue that 18 might have a little bit more grit to it and can age a little bit more, but this one is Zinfandel 55%, 31 Syrah, which is, we could go into that for another hour, and definitely 14% Petit Syrah, which is the baby of Syrah. Oh, go figure. It is actually Pelersan and Syrah are the 2 grapes that came together to make Petit Syrah, which is bigger than both. Exactly. It's crazy. It's not petite, actually. It's just a name.
Funny. They call it petite because the vine is kind of a weak grower.
Yeah.
The canes will normally be about yay long. So, like Cabernet can be 6 feet long.
Or
So,
Carignan.
Yeah.
or Carignan. It's not vigorous. It's not has nothing to do with the size of the wine.
Yeah.
It has to do with the size of the
Very
vine.
finicky. And Lord knows he's been making some of the best Petit Syrahs
Well,
in the world
Yeah.
for 30, 40 years now.
It's been a while.
Yeah. Well, what I love about this is it's just very aromatic right off the bat. I mean, each one of these are. I mean, the first one, the 2016 is all about just concentration. I can't wait to dive into this dark fruit. This one has that really unique blood orange kind of accent to it that oh man, I can't wait to get into this one and figure out the wines and kinds of pairings I can do with this. This is a broader spectrum to me. It's also a younger wine, so it's showing really well right now, especially those spicy components to
I
it.
wanted to say one thing. Excuse me.
Yeah.
One thing is that everybody talks about ageability or is going to do this or do that. We actually have the proof on this stuff because there's a consortium for 20 years. Every producer has been required to put aside and donate to the consortium minimum 5 of 10 cases for a library. So we have a very active and very good library from vintage 1. So we have 22 years of history that we can prove that these things age. They are not flashes in the pan.
Now, it's hard to find this stuff. You can find them. The only place you can really find verticals of all the producers is SIP store up in Hopland.
It's now the
the Golden Pig Wine Shop owned by the Goldens, fabulous
of course, the
wine grower
Goldens,
family.
yeah. They
And
just sound golden, and they are actually.
And some of the producers, of course, have in their tasting room. Ours are sold a little more broadly in some independent retailers in the country. But if people want to find these wines, it'll be through the producer directly, or like ours, we can, Chris will know where to get ours. But
I will.
They're not easy to find, but they're worth it.
Yeah, and you might hear the airplane flying over right now. Yeah, you could fly into Sonoma County anytime.
7 minutes away.
Yeah, you just go up there, go to Seattle, come down from Seattle, just fly here, you guys.
Non-stops, right into STS from Seattle, I believe.
I know. I just flew up there for the cruise that I did. It's
so easy.
So easy. Portland, Seattle. Oh, easy. Anyways, moving on. I love these wines so much, and I just love how they're different. They're dynamically different, but also delicious in so many ways. And they really are indicative of this vintage, and why these vintages were very good. I think we'd say that 17 was probably the tougher one, just because we had we get it down here just like they do up in Willamette Valley in Oregon. We get heat spikes, and that Labor Day weekend was a bitch.
Yeah.
Ooh, it was a bitch. It was very, very hot, and it did some things that were good too, because I will say this, it was one of the weirdest vintages of all times because we actually had a ton of water. We had the largest rainfall in California history. And if we didn't have that, the fires would not be fought the way they were, and we would be probably 3 to 4 times more damage than we had. But we needed to water those vines, and so it kind of kept them out there a little bit longer. And they're bigger, juicier, they're riper, they're ready to drink a little bit more now. I think these other two are the ones that I would stick away for 10 years and have no problem. I'd just buy a bunch of it and kind of go every year.
And then
maybe
open one with one of those awesome wood-fired pizzas that you can get everywhere, right? And
I know.
just one every once in a while,
Yeah. Little blood orange squeeze or something like that on top of it. I'm cool with that. Just do whatever you want. make me a pasta with raviolis or something like that, or something like that has raviolis, but put some like kind of blood orange kind of peel on there. I'm cool with that.
And then we'll match it with the 18 Coro and.
Love it. So very, very good. So let's taste one other one that we've got right here too, which is another great one. A good example of Sonoma County, actually, which is our great DNA Vineyards, Dry Creek Vineyards cab. And we're talking about a region, Dry Creek Vineyards, which is it's just basically up the road from us here. They are separated basically right off West Side Road. If you want to, instead of taking the turn to go to Healdsburg, you kind of just keep going on West Side Road, and you're pretty much in Dry Creek Valley. And then this is the label, the DNA, and it is amazing. And
it's at Total Wines throughout the country.
And let's also talk a little bit about the little strand right there and what
our helix.
The helix.
Yeah, because DNA really is not a double entendre. You mentioned Dennis and Andrea, but we met a million years ago when Dennis was involved in that research project with Dr. Meredith at UC Davis.
Dr. Carol Meredith,
Yep.
we salute you.
Trying to extract, she figured out how to extract the DNA from grapevines to discern the provenance of where some of these obscure varietals had come from. And of course,
Right.
she called on the Godfather.
Well, I went to an early lecture of hers.
And we met during those days.
Right, and then I'd call
So-
and blah blah blah. And
What year was that? When were we at?
95.
95.
Okay, that
We're
is the
about
year I
94,
graduated
95.
from Davis. So I
Are you trying to age me?
yeah,
Chris?
well, just listen. I took Carol's classes. That's why her and I are super buddies. I love her. I mean, what a great professor she was. But also, I mean, the DNA that she was able to solved a lot of the questions that we had about Zinfandel. We didn't know much
And
about
other
it.
varieties
Right,
since.
that people didn't know were here in this country until she
Right.
did those experiments.
And that's how great she is, and we love her, and we salute her. Carol Meredith, we love
we
you.
found it was archaeology. It was really fun. She had, by the way, she asked me, she says, well, you're in Mendocino. Yeah. She says, well, you guys, because she was first at Petit Syrah, she said, you have a lot of old Petit Syrah vineyards. I go, yeah. So one thing led to another. She enrolled me. So the idea was I was supposed to try to find the oldest sites of Petit Syrah that we'd take samples from, because we were trying to find out if there was much genetic variance in the Durif or Petit Syrah.
Yeah.
And so one thing led to another, and we actually found varieties that nobody knew were even in the country.
Yeah.
So it was archaeology. It was fascinating. She had 3 PhD field assistants. One gal with a sari from Pakistan, whose family were veterinarians. Another, I call her a hippie chick from Mendoza in Argentina.
Of course, you got to have one of those.
And then, oh god, they were all just bright and great. It was really a fun project.
Yeah, enthusiasm is important in wine, and I think that even when you get into science, it's very exciting. You know what we get to find. I mean, you work with so many old vine, Petit Syrahs, and you look at all the things, especially up in Redwood Valley. I mean, one of the greatest areas of the world. If you really want to talk about old vines in California, Zinfandel, Petit Syrah, Carignan. Carignan, you can't find a better concentration of old vine Carignan in the world than right there in that little
It's
small.
underappreciated.
Yeah, it is,
Totally.
and you put it in, but you put it in blends, and goddamn good, So it just feels like Mendocino is it's always a hidden treasure, and that's why we love it. For being someone that lives here in Sonoma County, I don't turn down opportunities to go to Mendocino. Let's just put it that way.